my entire life politically, basically on this issue of the environment has been Al Gore in the early 2000s to AOC nowadays.
It just became like this mantra that we need to change our way of life in a way we hadn't seen before.
For a young conservative growing up who also deeply cared about the environment, it was always weird that it felt like the left was the only side talking about this issue and conservatives weren't talking about it. But if you look at conservative history on environmentalism, on conservation, there was such a strong and rich legacy. And it's really only in the last few decades that it's become a more liberal or left-wing issue. My name is Chris Barnard. I'm the president of the American Conservation Coalition. We're the largest conservative environmental organization in the United States, and we exist to re-embrace the kind of Teddy Roosevelt legacy of conservation. He kind of kickstarted the modern conservation movement in America. Ulysses Grant in the 19th century started the first national park, Yellowstone National Park. Richard Nixon, a Republican president, founded the Environmental Protection Agency. Ronald Reagan signed the Montreal Protocol. There's such a rich legacy of conservative engagement on this, and that really is because conservation and conservatism are two sides of the same coin. It's the same root word, and we know that the original conservationists are hunters and farmers and ranchers and people that live on the land and that have such a direct personal relationship to the land. There's definitely a few dynamics that have caused kind of conservatives to disengage from environmental issues. One of them is that the left really start coming up with more and more extreme ideas on this.
The dividing in the 90s and the 2000s really happened. Hi, I'm Heather Reams. I'm the president of Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions. We're a right-of-center advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. For me, as a lifelong Republican, this is where I saw it too. I was young in government, having graduated from college, working on Capitol Hill, and I saw this myself, which was Al Gore, former Vice President of the United States, talking about, in his movie, The Inconvenient Truth, and Michael Moore, and really politicizing global warming, now known as climate change.
It is the most dangerous challenge we've ever faced. Has calculated that there is an 80% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap will be completely and totally gone in summer months in less than 5 years.
Do you feel like what you have been saying all along has been validated?
Well, I certainly wish I had been wrong.
The Al Gore kind of approach to global warming and climate issues has deeply polarized this conversation. Partly because I think he's actually misrepresented some of the science and made predictions that didn't come true. And so a lot of conservatives looked at that and said, well, that didn't come true, so why would I believe you on any of the other stuff? Whether it's extremist predictions on scientific things that just ended up not happening, or whether it's ideas like the Green New Deal, which would be a disaster for the country.
Climate change and our environmental challenges are one of the biggest existential threats to our way of life. Small, incremental policy solutions are not enough. We need to save ourselves, and we can save the rest of the world with us.
A lot of conservatives looked at that and said, well, I'm not on board with that, so I'm going to just put my head in the sand and deny that there's a problem altogether.
There is no climate crisis. It is a hoax. This is the one crisis that even Democrats couldn't create. They've been crying about the climate sky falling for 40 years now, predicting the world would end in 12 years. It is a lie.
What we saw with climate change and global warming was the wrapping around social services and the democratic agenda. If you acknowledge the climate is changing, then you also want big government, international government to solve the problem. And for any Republican is like, this is nowhere near where we want to be. And I think that's where we saw a lot of Republicans just say, I don't want anything to do with that.
Just because we don't like the solutions or we don't like the extremism doesn't mean we can just ignore the fact that there is an issue altogether. I think the science on these issues, on climate, shows that, look, it's not as extreme as people like Greta and others say, but it's also not like there's nothing happening. Like, there are issues.
The people you can ask are farmers. is the climate changing? And the answer is they'll tell you every day, yes, the climate is changing. Now, I think where a lot of Republicans think is, why is the climate changing? Is it because the earth is cooling? Is it because sometimes it cools and heats up and it's cyclical? I understand the reluctance of Republicans who question the dynamics of climate change. But the fact is that emissions are going up, and that we have the technology to bring them down. We need to be using U.S. ingenuity, we need to be using U.S. innovation, and all of our resources to be competitive in the world, to beat China, to beat Russia, to stay on top and help developing nations rely on countries like the United States for resources rather than adversarial countries. This is more than just is the climate changing. This is a geopolitical game that we are playing, and the United States can win if we engage.